My child, do not scroll away from this moment. Pause here, because what has found you now was never meant to feel ordinary. There is something moving quietly beneath the surface of a connection you have questioned more times than you admit, and the truth is far more powerful than the silence surrounding it. You have been looking for a sign, an explanation, perhaps even one small reason to believe that what you felt was not imagined. Yet while you were wondering whether you still mattered to this person, something had already shifted inside their heart. They made a choice. Not loudly. Not publicly. Not in a way you could immediately see. But somewhere between their fear and their longing, between what they showed the world and what they could no longer hide from themselves, your soulmate chose you. The astonishing part is that you still do not know what happened when that choice was made. There was a moment recently when they were forced to become completely honest with themselves. No audience was there to guide them. No friend was beside them giving advice. No one was telling them what they should feel. They were simply alone with the truth they had spent too long avoiding. And in that quiet space, your name returned to their mind in a way they could not dismiss. It was not a passing memory. It was not nostalgia. It was not loneliness pretending to be love. It was recognition. Something inside them finally stopped fighting what had been trying to rise for a long time, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine what life would look like if they stopped running from the connection they have with you. Stay with this, because the choice they made did not begin with romance. It began with fear. They suddenly saw what they could lose if they kept waiting. They saw the distance between you not as something permanent, but as something their hesitation had helped create. They remembered moments they once dismissed as insignificant and realized they had carried those moments far deeper than they knew. A conversation. A look. The way you understood something they could not explain. The way your presence made them feel seen without forcing them to perform. These memories returned one after another until something became impossible to ignore. Whenever they pictured peace, somehow you were there. You may have believed their silence meant they had forgotten you. You may have wondered whether someone else had become more important, whether circumstances had changed their heart, whether your connection had existed only strongly on your side. But the mystery is not that they stopped feeling. The mystery is why they became quieter precisely when those feelings became stronger. They were not prepared for the seriousness of what they felt. They could handle attraction. They could handle curiosity. They could even handle missing you. What frightened them was the realization that choosing you might require them to become someone more honest than they had ever been before. And this is where the story begins to change. Your soulmate has been standing between two versions of themselves. One version wants control. That version wants everything to be predictable, safe, carefully timed, emotionally protected. It says, wait a little longer. Do not reveal too much. Do not risk rejection. Do not change anything yet. But another version has been becoming stronger. That version is tired of pretending. It knows that some opportunities are not meant to be studied forever. Some connections cannot be measured until there is no risk left. Some people enter your life and quietly expose the difference between existing and truly living. And you, my child, became that difference for them. They did not expect you to affect them this deeply. In the beginning, they believed they could place you inside a simple category. A person they cared about. Someone memorable. Someone whose energy felt different. Someone they would think about occasionally and eventually understand. But the more they tried to reduce the connection, the more it expanded inside them. They noticed that your absence had weight. They noticed that certain songs suddenly carried meaning. They noticed that when something good happened, part of them wanted you to know. When something hurt, part of them wondered what you would say. When they imagined a future where everything looked successful from the outside, a strange emptiness appeared if you were missing from it. Do not skip what comes next, because this is where their private decision became something much more serious. There came a point when they mentally placed you beside every alternative they had been considering. Not necessarily another person. Sometimes the greatest rival to love is not another heart, it is fear, pride, timing, responsibility, uncertainty, old wounds, and the desire to remain unchanged. They compared the comfort of staying where they were with the possibility of moving toward you. For a while, comfort seemed easier. But easier no longer felt right. Something in them began asking a question they could not silence. What if I lose the one person I was supposed to stop running from? That question changed everything. Your soulmate started looking back at the ways you had shown up in their life. They remembered times when you cared without demanding recognition. They remembered moments when your intuition seemed to understand what they were hiding behind a smile. They remembered the patience you had shown, and perhaps they also remembered the point when your patience began turning into distance. That distance disturbed them more than they admitted. Because for the first time, they realized your presence was not guaranteed. They had grown accustomed to the idea that somehow the connection would remain available while they figured themselves out. They thought there would always be another opportunity, another conversation, another chance to say what they had avoided saying. But something recently made them understand that hearts do not wait forever in the same place. People grow. Energy changes. Doors that remain open for too long eventually begin to close, not from anger, but from self-respect. And when they sensed that you might be reaching that place, something inside them awakened with startling urgency. That was when they chose you. Not because they were afraid of being alone. Not because everything else had failed. Not because you were simply familiar. They chose you because after mentally walking through every road available to them, they realized the one road that frightened them most was also the one that felt most true. Loving you meant vulnerability. Choosing you meant surrendering the illusion that they could control every outcome. Moving toward you meant admitting that you had mattered more than they had been willing to confess. But there is another layer you have not seen. They did not merely choose you emotionally. They began changing something in their life because of that choice. It is subtle enough that you may not notice immediately, yet important enough that once you understand it, the recent silence will begin making sense. There has been a private rearrangement happening around them. Certain priorities are being questioned. Certain conversations are ending differently. Certain influences that once had power over their decisions are losing their grip. Your soulmate is beginning to look at their own life and ask, Does this bring me closer to the future I actually want, or does it keep me trapped inside the future everyone expects me to accept? That question has created tension. There are people around your soulmate who may not fully understand why they have changed. Some have noticed that they seem more distant, thoughtful, or emotionally distracted. Someone may have asked them what is wrong. Someone else may have guessed that there is a person behind this shift. Your soulmate may have smiled, changed the subject, or pretended everything was normal. But inside, your name was much closer to the answer than anyone realized. This is why you must not judge the current chapter only by what you can see. Silence is not always absence. Delay is not always rejection. Sometimes people become quiet when they are wrestling with a decision big enough to rearrange everything they thought they wanted. Your soulmate has been experiencing that kind of internal reckoning. And yet, my child, heaven would not bring you this message merely to tell you they chose you. There is something more important hidden behind that choice. They have begun to understand why losing you would feel different from losing anyone else. For a long time, they believed connection was mostly about chemistry, timing, attraction, compatibility, and circumstance. They thought love was something you entered when conditions became convenient. But what happened with you challenged that belief. You appeared at a time when perhaps neither of you fully understood the role you would play in each other's growth. Your presence touched places inside them that comfort could never reach. You reflected both their tenderness and their avoidance. You made them feel deeply, and because they felt deeply, they were forced to see themselves more clearly. That is one reason the connection may have seemed complicated. You were not simply someone they could enjoy without transformation. And transformation frightened them. They could not remain exactly who they had been and still love you the way they knew you deserved. Somewhere inside, they understood this. They knew that if they came toward you while still carrying certain habits, fears, evasions, or unfinished emotional patterns, they could damage something precious. So they hesitated. Perhaps too long. Perhaps painfully. Yet that hesitation has now become part of what they regret. Recently, they imagined you giving your heart to a life that no longer included them. The thought hit harder than they expected. They imagined you laughing with someone who did not need endless time to recognize your worth. They imagined you becoming unavailable not because you stopped caring, but because you finally chose peace over uncertainty. They imagined hearing one day that you had moved forward completely, and they would be left with nothing except the knowledge that they once had a chance to speak. That image unsettled them. It did something that months of thinking could not do. It forced a decision. They said something inwardly, perhaps not aloud, but with a seriousness they had never reached before. I cannot keep pretending this person is replaceable. And that is the sentence I want you to remember. You are not being asked to chase them. You are not being asked to abandon your boundaries, ignore reality, or build your future around someone else's potential. No, my child. Your strength matters here. Your life matters here. The revelation is not meant to pull you backward into waiting. It is meant to show you that what you felt had meaning, even while your path continues forward. Because something extraordinary happens when a person truly chooses someone in their heart. Sooner or later, that choice demands action. And action is exactly where your soulmate has been struggling. They know feelings alone are no longer enough. They know you may not believe beautiful words without consistency. They know they cannot simply appear and expect everything to return to the way it once was. Something inside them understands that if they approach you now, they must bring more than emotion. They must bring honesty, responsibility, clarity, courage. This realization is why their next move matters so much. There is something they want to tell you that they have rehearsed privately more than once. They have imagined how you might react. They have changed the wording. They have questioned whether to reveal everything or only enough to begin the conversation. They have wondered whether you would believe them. They have wondered whether you would be angry that it took so long. Most of all, they have wondered whether they are already too late. That fear has been following them. But there was one particular moment when their fear transformed into resolve. It happened when they remembered something you once did or said that proved your connection was never based on perfection. You had seen a side of them that others overlooked. You had given them emotional space without demanding that they become someone artificial. That memory made them realize something powerful. Perhaps they had been hiding because they feared being rejected by the very person who had once seen them most clearly. And then the truth became almost unbearable. They had been protecting themselves from the person with whom they secretly wanted to feel safe. Can you feel how everything changes when that is understood? The distance between you suddenly looks different. The missed opportunities look different. Even their silence begins to reveal something deeper. They were not always unsure about you. Sometimes they were unsure about themselves. But now the balance is shifting. Your soulmate has begun asking what courage would look like if they finally stopped allowing fear to make their decisions. And the answer keeps bringing them back to you. Stay until the end, because there is still one piece of this choice you do not know. They have made a private promise. This promise is not dramatic. It was not made in front of an audience. It did not arrive with grand declarations. It was born in one of those quiet moments when a person can no longer escape their own truth. They promise themselves that if another genuine opportunity appears to speak honestly with you, they will not hide behind the same excuses. They do not want to lose another moment pretending they need more certainty. But something unexpected happened after that promise. Almost immediately, they were tested. A situation appeared that gave them an easy excuse to retreat again. A misunderstanding, an outside opinion, a practical obstacle, or an old fear returned and whispered, "See? This is why you should stay silent." For a brief moment, the old version of your soulmate almost won. Almost. But this time they responded differently. Instead of immediately believing the fear, they questioned it. Instead of asking, "Why is this difficult?" they asked, "Why does difficulty always make me abandon what matters?" That question marked a turning point. They are starting to understand that meaningful connections are not proven by the absence of obstacles. Sometimes they are proven by whether two people are willing to become more honest because of them. And this is where their decision began moving from emotion into reality. Your soulmate has started preparing themselves for a conversation. Not necessarily tomorrow. Not necessarily in the exact way you imagine. But inwardly, something has already begun. They are collecting courage. They are facing truths they used to avoid. They are deciding what they must admit first. There is one confession in particular that frightens them. It is not merely, "I miss you." It is not merely, "I still care." It is something deeper. Something that explains why their behavior may have contradicted their feelings. They know that once they reveal this, you will finally understand why they pulled away at moments when they actually wanted to come closer. There was a reason they hesitated. A reason they never explained fully. And strangely, that reason has less to do with you than you may have believed. Your soulmate carried a belief that if they chose you completely, they would eventually disappoint you. They saw something in you they deeply respected, and instead of allowing that respect to inspire them, they sometimes allowed it to make them feel inadequate. They compared who they were with who they thought they needed to become before they could stand beside you honestly. So they delayed. They told themselves they needed more time. More stability. More certainty. More proof that they were ready. Yet readiness kept moving farther away. And while they waited to become perfect, the connection began asking only for truth. That is one of the most painful things they have recently realized. You may never have demanded perfection. You may have only needed honesty. And now they know the difference. This realization has brought a new emotion into their heart, regret mixed with determination. Regret because they see how much confusion could have been avoided. Determination because they do not want fear to write the final chapter. My child, there are moments when people wake up not because someone convinces them, but because their own soul becomes tired of repeating the same pattern. Your soulmate has reached the edge of such a moment. They have looked at the possibility of a life where they never tell you. That future suddenly feels unbearable. Imagine carrying something real inside your heart for years, pretending it was never important, only to discover later that one truthful conversation might have changed everything. That is what they are afraid of now. Not rejection. Regret. And those two fears are very different. Rejection hurts for a season. Regret can echo for years. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. This is why their inner choice has become stronger than you realize. But there is still something holding the timing in place. Something happened around them that made them realize they need to approach you carefully. They do not want their confession to feel impulsive. They do not want you to think they are speaking only because they became emotional one night. They want you to understand that this decision has been forming quietly over time. They have been watching their own feelings. Testing whether they would fade. They did not. They tried distracting themselves. Your memory returned. They tried becoming practical. Their heart remained stubborn. They tried telling themselves that if it were meant to matter, everything would be simple. Yet every attempt to dismiss you somehow revealed your importance more clearly. Finally, they stopped asking how to get rid of the feeling. They started asking what the feeling was trying to teach them. And the answer frightened them because it required courage. Choose what is true. That is what their heart kept saying. Choose what is true even if it changes your plans. Choose what is true even if other people do not understand. Choose what is true even if you have to admit you were wrong. Choose what is true before the person you care about becomes only a memory you were too afraid to fight for. And when they finally allowed those words to settle inside them, there was only one person they could see. You. But my child, do not mistake this revelation for permission to stop living your life. That would miss the deepest lesson. The reason this message found you is not only because someone chose you. It is also because you are being reminded to choose yourself. While they gather courage, your path cannot become a waiting room. Your joy cannot depend on when another person speaks. Your worth was never determined by whether your soulmate recognized it quickly enough. And strangely, this is part of what is drawing them toward you now. They sense that something has changed in you. You are not holding the connection in the same way. Perhaps you are less willing to chase explanations. Perhaps you are beginning to protect your peace. Perhaps you have started realizing that love should not require you to constantly prove that you deserve clarity. That shift has reached them even if you have not spoken about it. They feel the difference. And it has made them understand that the version of you who once waited patiently may not wait forever. This is why the next chapter carries such intensity. Because two choices are forming at the same time. They have chosen you. And you are learning to choose your peace. Where those two choices meet will decide what happens next. There is a conversation coming in this story where one of you will no longer be able to hide behind assumptions. Something will have to become clear. But before that moment arrives, your soulmate has one final internal battle to face. They must decide whether to tell you the entire truth or only the safe version. The safe version would be simple. I have been thinking about you. I miss talking to you. I hope you are doing well. Those words could reopen the door without revealing too much. But the full truth is different. The full truth would expose why they have been distant. Why they watched from silence. Why they kept returning to memories of you. Why they compared future possibilities and felt something missing. Why they recently made a decision nobody around them knows about yet. And most importantly, why they have finally admitted to themselves that if they are ever asked, even privately, who would you choose if fear was removed from the decision, they already know the answer. You. They know it. Their heart knows it. But saying it to you is another matter. Because once spoken, everything changes. There is no returning to comfortable ambiguity. No hiding inside mixed signals. No pretending this was casual. And that is precisely why the next thing they are considering doing has surprised even them. They have been thinking about revealing something from the past. A moment involving you that they never told you mattered. You likely experienced it and moved on. They did not. To you, it may have seemed like a small exchange. Perhaps a sentence. Perhaps a gesture. Perhaps a moment when you defended them, encouraged them, believed in them, or simply stayed when they expected you to leave. That moment became an anchor. They remembered it during times when they doubted everyone. They remembered it when they questioned whether genuine connection was even possible. They remembered it while trying to convince themselves they could forget you. And the memory kept answering the same question. Why does this person still matter so much? Now they know. Because you reached a part of them they had hidden even from themselves. And once someone has been seen that deeply, ordinary distance does not erase the impact. But there is another secret connected to that memory. After that moment, they made a decision about you much earlier than you realize. They just did not have the courage to live according to it. That is what they are finally confronting now. They are realizing that choosing someone internally and choosing them through action are two completely different things. For a long time, they chose you only in private. In imagination. In memory. In the secret future they never admitted wanting. But life is now pressing them toward a harder question.